to agenda item 5.3. It's on page 31 of our agenda papers, meeting papers rather. And I can have a mover and seconder for the first resolution to receive the report. Kia ora, Penny. Seconder.
Kia ora.
Malcolm Welsh. And all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Kia ora.
Those against, any abstentions? And we'll hand it over to Ben Hope, William Wright and Justine Dorr. Kia ora tata.
Kia ora, thank you, Tame. Just a quick couple of introductory comments, if I may. You might recall at the 18th of October hui for the Joint Committee that we were talking about the COVID traffic light system coming in and the Joint Committee sought advice from us about how we would look to apply the traffic light system to the Moutikura, but also to the Joint Committee with a view to thinking about particularly meeting in person on Marae and in other places, other locations in the new year in 2022. So this paper actually reflects an interim approach, and that's for two reasons. One is the traffic light system has got a fair number of requirements that we must reflect in our operations, but also because we're still waiting on two key parts of the, I guess, the information that we need to make, I guess, a final recommendation to yourselves as Joint Committee. One, we are still waiting on the Northern Regional Council COVID vaccination policy. I know that that's very close to coming out, may even come out today. Penny may have more info on that timing, which will for us at least as the Kaipara Moutikura staff will mean that we are needing to operate in accordance with that policy. And secondly, we know that central government is putting out a risk assessment tool, which is voluntary, but which will look at different types of jobs and different types of activities and set quite clear recommendations around risk levels in respect of those activities and roles. And we do want to pay attention to those, to that tool, I think, as well, once we've had a chance to look at it. And I think Penny may also be more updated on this, but I understand that tool is coming up out this week as well. So it's an unfortunate timing, but we are asking for, I guess, thoughts from yourselves for an and ideally approval for an interim approach, subject to whatever changes are sensible once we've seen those two things. So a slight change on the papers in front of you, which were finalised last week. But I know that Willie has been in touch also with our Uri partners around these settings, and we hope that the paper in front of you reflects at least where the discussions had reached at that point. And Ben Hope, our communications lead in the Moutikura, also has been reaching out to other like agencies and just getting a sense of where they're at. So I won't necessarily speak for too much longer, other than saying we are doing the right thing around two principles that sum up, I guess, or underpin the paper, the approach. One is around protecting health and safety of all of those working under the KMR banner. We think that's pretty important given our principles, our tika, but also to honour partnership commitments that we've made together since the MOU, well, before the MOU, and that's to get together face-to-face, kanohi te kita kanohi, where we can, as once it's safe to do so. So those two things have guided what you see on the paperwork. We're just really conscious, though, that in respect of joint committee meetings, what we're proposing may need some discussion. And just to guide that discussion for RED is now, we're proposing remote meetings only until such time as we understand what those the tools, the NRC settings will be. And that's in line with current interim NRC settings. But we're also suggesting for Orange that we'll take the stricter of two things in respect of joint committee meetings in person. One is if there is, for us, we'll say that vaccinated people who can do the Vax Pass can meet in person, and those who are unvaccinated or who do not wish to disclose their vax status will be meeting remotely where possible. But should the venue, and that may be marae-based settings, have a stricter protocol, we would observe that. So that's the recommendation there. It's a slight nuance. Green, we're still waiting on what COVID looks like under green government guidance, but we would recommend meeting in person as a matter of course in that respect. So just a short summary of where the paper's got to, where the thinking's got to, and we would very much welcome thoughts, observations, and ideally updates from those who know more about what's coming. Thank you. Willie, would you like to mention anything on the URIs, your conversations with partners? Is that a good thing to just keep
Yeah,
with?
yeah. Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Tommy, and good morning to members of the Joint Committee. We did have an instance. We were hoping to start off our training, the field advisors training, and this is a good example. We thought it would be appropriate to initiate the program at Waihoa Marae. We work closely with trustees and the Secretary of Waihoa, and in the end, and this is because a case was identified in Dargaville, both the KMR program, the training program with Waihoa Marae, decided not to go ahead and have the opening hui at Waihoa Marae. Clearly, with just about all maraes, the trustees, the maraes themselves have their own individual kaupapa and how they deal with COVID. And it was a case at that time where we felt that the respect belongs with the home people, the home kainga. And so we changed our plans about a week, 10 days out from the start of the field program, and actually had the hui, the pōwhiri, under a big old fig tree down in Mihi. And luckily for us, the weather was on our side. But anyway, so that was just an example. I happened to be down in Poto 2 Fridays ago to finalise the filming down there. Clearly, they have their own protocols. They certainly still wanted to meet and greet, and we did that at a distance within the whare of Waikato 2. Yeah, so that's where everything is at the moment. And like Justin's saying, we're waiting to comprehend perhaps a good approach and a protective approach to our staff and to the public that we engage with. Kia ora. Thanks, Tommy.
Apologies. Just hand over to Daniel Newman first, and then Danielle Hancock, then Malcolm Walsh. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Tommy, and thank you very much, Justine, for the paper which I've read. I understand the COVID protection framework and understanding the principles around the requirement for the vaccination passports. I'm fully vaccinated, and it's been a big part of my life for some time. Concurrent to vaccinations, however, given the fact that there is still the chance of contracting COVID even if you're double vaxxed, I'm getting tested every week out of an abundance of caution, particularly given the profile of where I live and working with a lot of my constituents who are COVID positive to provide support for their home isolation. So I'm getting tested every week, which I don't necessarily have to. Well, I do have to when I'm working in vaccinations, but I note that with the paper, I don't think necessarily sets out the requirement for testing prior to going to locations where there is a such as marae settings. I'm just wondering if you had given thought to the request or the requirement for testing over and above the obvious need to present your vaccination passports, because what I am concerned about, I'm concerned for my own health, but what I'm particularly concerned about, I don't know, the situation is quite the same for Greg and Danielle. They're in a different part of Auckland than me. But I'm very concerned about ensuring that even if I were healthy and well, but became COVID positive and asymptomatic, I obviously don't want to present a risk to communities that I'm going into that are more vulnerable than me because of a lower level of vaccination coverage. So could you comment on that?
Kia ora. Thank you, Councillor Newman. Look, we'd be open-minded to that approach of negative testing, say 72 hours before, if that's something that the Joint Committee feels is important. It would fit with the principle of making sure that everyone working under the banner, including our partners, are safe. That first principle I spoke of. We would be very open-minded to that if there was support for that.
Well, I'm not sure if it needs to be codified in a policy, Chair. I'm certainly, I would be personally, I'd be comfortable if it was. Suffice to say, I don't do anything these days in the context of attending anything anywhere, which I can't really do anyway, beyond my normal work, unless I have the comfort of a negative test. So I'm doing that every week. I don't think that I would be coming to any event in Northland unless I was tested prior to and could declare a negative test. So that would be my feedback, and I'll leave it up to others to make their remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may make one observation, Tame, with your support on that, which is that even if it isn't codified, if our marae-based partners or community hall-based partners also require a test, of course, the stricter protocol would apply. So that's an alternative way of, I guess, making sure that if there were a requirement from particularly our Auckland whānau to have that negative testing, that's another way around that. So just putting a couple of options out there for yourselves to consider. Thank you.
All right.
Kia ora koutou.
I got
Kia ora,
Danielle.
through the chair.
I got Danielle
Kia ora,
Hancock.
hi, tēnā. I can't see you.
Kia ora, Danielle.
Kia ora, Chair. Thank you, Justine. I actually am quite comfortable with this interim proposal. I think it's a good start for us, and to be able to continue to meet remotely is really good. I have been thinking over the last couple of months whether for us to get back to my visits, whether it might be suitable that the committee would like that those north of the Auckland border would visit the northern marae, and those south of the border would visit marae south of the border, and we kind of keep a bit of separation so we don't have to cross the border and potentially deal with the hold-ups and things that go with that. So that committees would be okay with some of the committee meeting in person and some not. Kind of putting that out to the group to see what you think.
Thank you very much, Danielle. That's probably something that we'll be considering as part of the mix, is how to do this when we can. Yes.
Okay. Kia ora, Danielle. Justine, just check with Malcolm Welsh. You still want to?
Yeah, most of what I was thinking was covered. Probably just the only other thing is, and it's probably a thought more than anything, is the impact our policy will have on our partners, potentially. You know, providers and the whatnot, and what our policies will, how they will potentially impact.
Kia ora, Malcolm, if I may. So John Hutton's done a bit of deep work there around some of the legal issues in respect of our contractors and our accredited partners. So if John's still on the line, I'd invite him to summarise that work, because it does affect some of our partners, providers.
Kia ora. Aroha mai, Malcolm, could you ask your question again, and I'll provide a more accurate answer than I'm likely to right now.
Yeah, probably more a query. Yep, it's just wondering how our policies will potentially affect any of our partners or contractors and the impacts.
No, thank you. My understanding is we are able to require, and we will require, our field advisor contractors to be double vaxxed when they're engaging at a property level with individual farmers and things. So that's really important, and it'll be a condition of their employment. We also have a responsibility, a direct responsibility for them as the Kaipara, Northern Regional Council, effectively in its legal state of hosting the Kaipara Mauri Kura. So we'll want to extend that to those advisors. We haven't really thought in a detailed way about the more community-facing roles, but the NRC's policy of when we have that finalised would apply to Kaipara Mauri Kura staff in that instance, and I think that the sensible thing there to do is to make sure that everybody is safe. So I think, yeah, hopefully that's clearer. We aren't able, I should say, we're not able to bind third parties that we don't have a kind of more direct responsibility for. So say a fencing contractor that might work directly to a farmer, because we do need to kind of keep the integrity of landowner choice at the landowner level. So we wouldn't be cascading down these kind of obligations all the way into the provider chain, but certainly for the providers who are closer to us, or we're directly contracting ourselves.
I was more thinking of like our nurseries and whatnot, our providers, and who potentially will be funding directly through the 50-50, and if their policies will be conflicting, and how ours impact, but work in progress. Take that.
I can respond to that. So the in terms of identifying KMR accredited providers, we do have a criteria that we want them to have robust health and safety systems. There'll be a work safe kind of check built in here, and now that's broader than just the COVID question. And other than that, I don't believe we can dictate down to them, but I think it would be a call for us to make if it came to our attention, say that a nursery had no policy whatsoever or was indifferent to vaccination status. Then I think we'd have to have a conversation with them there, but that's probably assuming too much. It's something we'll just need to keep an eye on.
Kia ora, John. Kia ora, Malcolm. Cherie?
Yep, kia ora. I think if you were to have a look at my vaccination passes, you'll find that they're only valid till July 2022. The fact that the DHBs are actually moving to living with COVID as normal. So there's some stuff you might need to look on the Ministry of Health websites and use that as your lead. I'd suggest that, Justine. From just the mihi that we're working with, we know that according to statistics, that a tsunami would not really hit us until about March next year. With the borders opening up, with everybody being able to fly free, you're going to see some amazing statistics come out over Christmas. We're not wanting them, but it's for those that wish to cross borders to go have Christmas and holidays. And yeah, so I would encourage us to utilise remotely, to agree to do that to the next 3 months. so that we can stabilise the mihi that we need to have done. And then possibly, even when I was having a conversation of when we go do that, you think we'll go back to level 1. They don't think we're going to get back to level 1. And that wouldn't be before June next year. And that's the green light you're talking about. So there's a lot of misinformation flying around. There's a lot of things that are crossing over each other. But just in the short while from changing to the traffic system, we've seen a massive increase in admittance in the hospitals. The interesting thing we are finding is that the ones that have got COVID, the MIQ and SIQs are really for those of close contacts. The close contacting list is what we're finding really difficult because people not wanting to breach other people's confidentiality, phone numbers. So we're having gatherings that are happening and we're receiving 2 phone numbers to track. So there's a lot of that stuff happening at the moment, and understanding the kaupapa of self-isolation quarantine. And we are having, I agree with you, Daniel, the number of vaccinations, we are actually finding the age group being quite young, which is surprising. Yeah, of the anti-vaccinators. It's a very young group in their late teens, early 20s. So that's just the kōrero I have to share for now. But I do support that we do stay remotely. And because, as you understand, we have 50 other kaupapa we need to all deal with. Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora. Thank you, Cherie. Daniel, do you have a comment?
Tami, the reason, I mean, look, my preference is to stay remotely for the time being, but even when we move from being remotely into a situation whereby we're meeting in person, testing has to be normalised over and above vaccination status. I'm working with, just as an aside, I'm working with principals associations in my ward, the Manireo and Papakura principals associations respectively, to support those school communities who are starting school-based vaccinations in partnership with our marae in Q1 calendar year 2022 tonight, as part of the presentation, giving them some of the intel updates from Dr. Andrew Arnold about how COVID has changed in Tāmaki Makaurau. Overwhelmingly, 48% of all the COVID positive cases are in quintile 5 socioeconomic deprivation. That means the bottom 20% of the community is copping nearly half of the COVID cases. Overwhelmingly, those cases, unfortunately, are Māori, and a very significant number of the COVID positive cases are amongst people who are not eligible to get vaccinated because they are children. I am very, very concerned about anyone from my part of Tāmaki Makaurau travelling to Northland anytime soon, or Lakes or Tairawhiti, including myself, simply because I worry about the well-being and the resilience of those communities that are receiving us. So I support the continuation of meeting remotely, and I would like to think that that will continue until such time as both vaccination rates in my part of Tāmaki Makaurau are well into the mid-90% on double vax, and until Northland is significantly higher than where it's at. And that includes starting the commencement of the vaccination program for the 5s to under 12s, which needs to obviously kick off in mid-January. Thank you.
Kia ora, Daniel.
Kia ora, Daniel. Just before you leave, I heard you speaking about the vaccination rates, we are really needing the testing spots as well, marae and school testing. Because we've got some parts have got high stats, but we don't have. Kia ora.
Yeah, look, I sorry, Chair. I mean, and this isn't a meeting about COVID, but obviously, yeah, the effectiveness of any sort of public health response depends on the intel around testing. And my people get complacent, and there is a need to continue to test. So, for me personally, Chair, I would like to see testing as a requirement for engagement at Hui, even if that's not necessarily an obligation of the marae that are receiving us, but I certainly will be getting tested, 72 hours prior to any hui that I'll be coming to when the borders do open up.
Kia ora. Kia ora tātou. Kia ora, Justine, William and Ben. I guess from the range of comments and feedback that you've had, there are two quite clear levels of engagement that we're talking about. The first concerns the Joint Committee and our quest to take every other meeting out into the rohe and to engage with marae and the communities of those marae in that exercise. There was a sort of a three-way circuit, if you like. Well, that's obviously one of those points of concern and discussion that we're having now. And the other relates to the operations of Kaipara Māori Kura. I think the points that Malcolm have raised around our partners and people that we have these arrangements have all got to sort of be aligned, if you like, to how Kaipara Māori Kura wants to deliver its services. And with that, think of, access to land blocks that have a number of essential services happening on a daily basis. Tankers going in and out of dairy platforms who are connected to the Fonterra and any other milk supplier, processor. And with that, I think comes the necessity to have clear operational arrangements, how Kaipara Māori Kura wishes to deliver its business. And I think the level of uncertainty is definitely there. My vaccine passes, when I understood, were given a 6-month lifetime. But, like the lifetime driver licenses, we all got so many years back. That didn't last long, and it changed. So I guess we can expect changes to occur. But we can have some sort of clarity, I suppose, and what we'd like to encourage is the thinking that goes along with the impact of keeping our virtual links at the Kaipara Moana Remediation Joint Committee as that progresses. In 6 months' time, for instance, we're going to be at a point where we need to make some clear positions or make positions clear around the alignment or the transition from the Joint Committee to the proposed Kaipara Moana body, and how we play that out. Would that require a sort of full-blown face-to-face workshop? Remains unknown in my mind, but I guess we'd really look to what could be workable, and certainly the last thing we must ensure is that the pressure is not on the respective marae or hapu or groups that are wanting to host a Kaipara Moana Remediation Joint Committee. I think that has to happen, and really thank the insights that we've been given today. But I guess the best we can do in this time of uncertainty is try and work along the lines of keeping the momentum going in support of Kaipara Māori kura. And we have to revisit the question of forward planning our face-to-face meetings, and they have to be subjected to COVID impact or impact of COVID. Kia ora.
Can I just perhaps sum up? First of all, thank you for sharing those insights. They've been very valuable. I too was on the vaccine task force, so I'm very cognizant of risk. I'll be honest. I know more about the virus and the vaccine and how they interact than most people want to know. So I err on the side of caution, particularly with new variants. What I've heard, and I'm hoping that we can modify the recommendations to reflect what I've heard today. I'm hoping I captured them accurately. Let's make a proposal to adopt the interim policy as written down, but subject to NRC policy settings that are coming out today, which will affect the Mōrikura operations, and we do need to update those traffic light systems for the staff alone, and any risk assessment tool changes that are recommended. Also, to modify the current recommendations for orange settings so that testing before any marae or community visits is recommended for Joint Committee and KMR staff. I'm very happy to do that. And just to clarify, Amy raised a good point around where the two regions, Auckland and Northland, Tamaki Makaurau and Te Tokoro, were in different settings, so that we would apply the structure of the traffic light framework. I would also recommend that, I'm hearing you, Cherie, around the MOH, the Vax passes are 6 monthly just because there's planned third boosters. What we would do, of course, is make sure that that's a valid booster, a valid Vax passport, make sure that's clarified. But also I suggest a recommendation that this interim policy, as updated, would be implemented just for the first quarter of next year, and then reviewed as data, as science, and as virus spread rates become clearer. So there's quite a lot in that. I'm happy to provide some written recommendation changes to this group to consider, if that pleases yourselves and the
Okay, kia ora, Penny Smart.
Kia ora, Tamei. I'm happy with what Justine's just articulated. Just wanting to maybe clarify for people, when it says in number 3, note that the Kaipara Mōrikura staff and contractors, I'm pretty sure that volunteers are included in that as well, Justine? Yeah.
Sorry, yes, we can make that explicit, no problems. We've had legal advice around this.
Yeah, that was all. I agree that it's a moving target, and we're just going to have to keep assessing as the situation evolves, but certainly happy to stay remote for now. Kia ora.
Okay, kia ora one and all. Are there any further comments? And just ask you all to please note the amendments as suggested by Justine. We have got a further 2 parts to recommendation 2, and 2 parts, and as well as that, numbers 3 and 4. Given the amendments as recommended by Justine and through the discussion so far, are we in a position to adopt those recommendations?
I'm happy to move them, Chair, if this goes along.
Happy to second.
Moved by Daniel Newman and seconded by Cherie Povey. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any against? Any abstentions? Kia ora tātou. Thank you, Ben, Wiremu and Justine. Kia ora. All right. Moving to agenda item well there. 5.4, the strategic risk framework, and hand over to, before handing over to Justine Daw and John Hutton, can we have a mover and a seconder to receive the report on strategic risk framework, please?
I'll move, Tommy. It's Georgina.
Georgina, do we have a seconder?
Happy to second.
Seconded by Jane Sherrard. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those against, any abstentions? That's received, then handed over to you, Justine and John Hutton.
Kia ora, everyone again. Sorry, I've quite a role today's meeting unexpectedly. John will chip in as he needs to, he's shaking his head. All right, so just a little bit of context before, I know the paper, I'll take the paper as read, but a little bit of context that I think is quite important, and it speaks to the really good conversations we had on the 18th of October workshop. So each year, the annual KMR work plan includes quite a detailed risk register. It's often quite long and operational, and that's important. We, the Maurikura, now we're up and running, and we have staff. We will regularly review those operational risks. In fact, there's a meeting before Christmas to do that. And obviously, from a governance level, the joint committee level, it's really important that you have assurance that that review is undertaken and that we are actively mitigating the risks that do change through time. So in respect of our going forward in 2022, I do propose to have a bit of a dashboard in the Poutātaki's report, which is backwards looking and reflects the month that's been, or the 2 months that have been, but also signals things that are likely to come, or that we're keeping an eye on, both opportunities and potential risks. And we will certainly be looking to very clearly signal changing risks in the operating environment that could affect our delivery of the work plan, ideally a strategic plan next year too. So that's a bit of context there. And you'll recall in late June, the Joint Committee signed off on the annual work plan, which included a detailed risk assessment. Ministry for the Environment is our primary contract holder and investor for the Crown, looks at that risk register and talks about it with us pretty regularly, as they should. It's a large amount of money that we have been honoured to receive and invest for the good of the KMR program for the kaupapa. On 18th of October, you'll recall, and I was sitting in, it was my first joint committee workshop as an observer, but we actually talked about starting a more strategic risk conversation, the higher order or more synthesized risks, thinking about the big things that are going to knock this program off its perch potentially if we didn't think about as a group of governors and, if you like, our executive in the Maurikura. And that discussion is super helpful for everyone listening in the Maurikura, particularly myself as the incoming Poutātaki. And what you see in the paper today is really a synthesis view of those what's keeping you up at night elements that we talked about in that hui. And it will feed into 2 or 3 things. One is it will feed into these regular risk reviews that I spoke of in my own reporting to yourselves with the leadership team. We'll keep an eye on these things. And because there's not 27 of them, it means that we're going to have them much more actively in our minds to take care of and review. Secondly, these strategic risks will be a guide, if you like, and inform the incoming or the next forthcoming annual plan, the work plan as discussed, and we will be breaking that down into some more operational risks as we do so. But I think it's really important that in a summarised way that this group gets to see and assess and discuss the things that are keeping us in the Maurikura now awake, myself included. And you'll see that the framework I've put together is pretty simple. It's pretty short. It's designed to be easy to understand. It mirrors what I'd call good practice in risk management, but this is a first test for yourselves about whether the information, the level of information, the way we're presenting that risk information works for yourselves, and whether you need something different there. This will be something that we keep working on improving. I think it's part of the Maurikura's journey of better improvement, practice and continuous improvement. Obviously, you'll see that there are some risks in the program that are red now, red being not great, that we are worried about. And you'll see that there's one here, the COVID risk, is discussed just now that is unmitigated and perhaps unmitigatable. And so today's conversation is really around, is that risk, the mitigations we put down, some of which will be quite technical, does that work for you? Is your risk appetite as a joint committee matching where the Moutikura leadership have got to around the risks, the risk types, and whether or not that level of mitigated risk or residual risk is appropriate? And I'd be very keen to hear from yourselves about all aspects in this paper, how it's presented, have we got the right set of strategic risks, and are you comfortable with the level of residual risk?
Sort of, Justine, I'm not sure whether you finished that or...
Sorry, yes, that was all my, I was wanting to introduce. I was taking the paper as read, but I'm happy to take comments or questions.
Any comments? Kia ora, Virginia.
Kia ora. Kia ora, Justine. Thanks for that. Your table, your attachment 2 with the you know, the colour graph, and you've got the numbers on it. Can you just explain that again, please? Like your numbers are all the numbers 1 to 9.
Good point. Good question.
Yeah, I just trying to sort of count them up, but it didn't sort of match. So I just wanted to know how you were portraying that, please.
Yes, look, that's a very valid question there, and apologies if it's not clear. So you'll notice on attachment 1 in the table that looks a bit like this, there's risk description, and they have numbers: SR1, SR2, SR3, strategic risk 1, strategic risk 2. So the numbers that you see in attachment 2 and how they're placed on the risk, the mitigated or residual risk rating that's shown are actually just the numbers relate from 1 to 9 to those risks. It's an easier way than putting a big long description in there. And of course, what we have shown in attachment 2 is what we think of as the residual risks. And look, some of them are edging into the high. That was a good exercise to have gone through around understanding not just the original risk, but with all the things that we're doing currently or planning to do, what do we think the risk to the program is? And you'll see number 5, strategic risk 5, the COVID impacts on delivery, engagement delivery, you name it, the whole lot of the program. Those are seen as high residual risk. And unfortunately, you know, that's something that I think we're really grappling with collectively around how to manage getting on with the delivery while managing risk to program and people.
So just one more question, because I know we've been through these through the workshop as well. Like with your changing operating environment, and you've put SR1, the political investor support, right, is low. Who finally determined that that sort of rating? Did you?
It's a good question. Ultimately, that was my assessment, up for discussion and debate. But I'm pretty close to the people in Wellington around that, and I know that we still have very much their support, including around the delays that we're experiencing from a COVID perspective. For example, in my previous life, just the week before last, I was consulting in Ministry for the Environment on another program, and so I actually went to see a couple of the key people there and asked them about their levels of comfort around a few things, just meet and greet kind of stuff. And I know that we have such strong support from the ministry and from the minister around this program. And what they're saying to us is that they know that this is a new way of doing things, and that they are wanting to give us time and space to be able to deliver on contractual commitments, to the point where informally, and John Hutton was involved in this conversation too, the program leadership in Ministry for the Environment were saying that they want to think about how we do our quarterly reporting to them. At the minute, it's reasonably detailed. They're wanting to move into a higher trust, allowing the governance of this group as well to come to the fore. So that was sort of what was really driving my thinking there. But it is up for discussion, including from others who also have those sorts of perspectives.
Okay, so if it potentially changed, like in our meetings in the future, and you'd had these conversations after our quarterly reports go into MFE, that sort of risk, that would come back to us and be discussed, and it would be flagged.
Yes, I would like to do quarterly reporting to yourselves on risk in a more formalised way, something shorter ideally, but can just for a while we could keep some of this content for yourselves to see whether things have changed, and we would highlight. But more importantly, from my perspective, would be every time I report as a potataki, I would have proposed to have a dashboard that looks at risks and what's keeping me up at night from a leadership perspective. I'm certainly wanting to share that with yourselves. So I would anticipate being able to paint a bit of a risk picture, maybe not in a formalised framework like this, but as a narrative, to say every time I report to yourselves, saying, look, I'm worried about this thing that's happening here. And I'll probably look at a quarter by quarter view. So if we're getting into what I call the 90-day plan perspectives, some of you are familiar with that framework. Now that's all up for testing with yourselves in the new year. But for me, backwards looking reports are hard for yourselves as governance to do much about. You're making decisions on our decision papers, but I would like us to move into a reporting paradigm where you might get a bit of an activity report from the last month, but you also get a chance to engage with myself and the Maurikura leadership team about what we see the work program coming up in the next quarter is, and how we see the risk around that, and testing comfort level, and maybe sharing together what are the things that we can collectively do to reduce risk in key areas.
Thank you. No, that would be good, because I think each and every one of us may come from a different angle on some of these risks at different times over the program, as we move forward. So yeah, thank you. Thanks, Justine.
You're Penny Smart.
But thank you. Just some things. Firstly, with Virginia talking about the numbers and the relationship between those two tables, I'm just wondering if it's a thought to where you've got the first table low, you could put a number next to it, so it's just easy. Yeah. But one of the, just looking at this, or I have looked at it over the weekend as well, what I sort of wonder is one of our biggest risks farmer uptake per se, and not necessarily regulations related, and should that be in there? Because I see that as quite a big risk. So that's just a suggestion. Yeah, I like your optimism as to the low about regulation uptake as well, and also would sort of wonder about, and you may be able to give me an update on this, the SR8, is that really a low risk once it's mitigated, or do we know that yet?
Thank you, Penny. If I may, just respond to a couple of those points. Some of the changes that this group's talked about today in respect of the landowner grants, the sediment reduction plan criteria, is designed to resolve the issue of landowner uptake. I think it's a real issue. Where we got to that, just to help people understand, is this is a now view of the risk. And what we know is we've got landowners who are in our first tranche who've been waiting rather a long time to engage with us and take up these grants and get going. So right now, and we do have some capacity constraints, demand side, if you like, supply side. I think the demand supply side is probably asymmetric at the minute, which means we've got more landowners and community groups and whenua whānau groups right now who want to engage with us and get going, then we've got capacity in the Maurikura, but that will change. So you're right, I would expect that risk once the front runners, the first landowners off the rank get going. So, perhaps by June next year, we will see some big interesting risk profiles starting to emerge there. I'm keeping an eye on it. I also went back and had a look at dairy returns and sheep and beef returns for right now. So dairy will be up, which I'm sure Penny will be aware of, but sheep and beef slightly up. And I guess it depends on drought and all sorts of things that come right now. But we do know that we've got some pretty big landowners who I'm worried about delivery to meet their needs right now rather than the other way around. I think the ramp up of the program, you'll remember the budget goes up, the anticipated sediment reduction planning goes up rapidly in year 3 and then plateaus. I'm worried about next year if I'm worried about any year.
So that may be added at some stage. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Okay. And did you have a comment on SRH? SR8.
Oh, sorry. Yes, apologies. Yes, this is so just for others who haven't got the paperwork right in front of them. This is around how the treaty settlement processes and engagement with non-Kaipara Uri mana whenua groups affects our KMR delivery. Look, I think that is something to keep an eye on. Maybe those risk profiles are lower than they should be. I'd be open-eared to hear from others around that.
Kia ora, Justine, Penny. Amy McDonald.
Kia ora, Tame. I'm just going to keep my camera off because my mobile internet is a little bit unstable. Thanks, Justine. I really appreciated the tables and was happy with how it's all been presented for us. I just wondered if you could comment really briefly on climate change as a risk, and it's not in there. I'm just sort of wondering how you're seeing it, in terms of the risk profile, and I wondered if it was more operational because it's around, things like drought and storms, but just a quick comment from you on that would be really great. Thank you.
Kia ora, Amy, and we do note that's in the operational risks at the minute in the work annual plan risk register, so it's not forgotten. There's 2 things, and John might want to jump in too. Firstly, we are very aware that planting rates, survival rates, if you like, how drought or flash rainfall events, flooding events, fit into survival rates for plantation, the planted riparian areas. The survival rates that have been proposed by Duncan and the team actually, I think, are reflective of perhaps the higher risk here. And we know that we've been having discussions, for example, with NRC and Auckland Council too, about where we set those rates, if you like, to ensure both minimum while stretching for higher survival rates. So some of that will come through in the operational policy settings. That said, it is something to keep an eye on, and if there were droughtiness or, if you like, flash weather events extreme weather events that impacted on, I guess, landowner profit margins, and it speaks to Penny's earlier point around landowner uptake. If people are diverting energy and time into rehabilitating, if you like, the whenua that's affected by climate variability, climate change impacts, then they're unlikely to be as free to engage with the KMR program and spend money on the things that we want them to spend it on. But we'll find a way of keeping an eye on that through the operational risk plan. It's definitely a specific risk in that list, and we've got a meeting before Christmas to just review those risks. And in that context, we'll also, I guess, discuss Penny's question for the next quarter. Thank you.
Kia ora, thanks for that. Appreciate it.
Any further comments? I'd like to make a comment on the catchment-based proposals that may seem to be in competition with the Kaipara Uri proposals. I think it's important that our early iterations of setting out the strategy was quite explicit in starting at the headwaters and working towards the centre. And that should not be seen as some kind of threat between non-Kaipara Uri programs and those that are seemingly should attract a higher level of priority. And with it comes the expectation that we should try and seek a strong alignment as possible with programs that are currently occurring at those places or within those places. And we all know that there have been a number of freshwater improvement, jobs for nature, shovel ready, 1 billion trees, and on it goes. Our programs running up and down these catchment areas. But what we haven't got is a sort of complete profile, if you like, of how this all connects into the Kaipara Moana remediation. And I just shudder at the thought of going out to meet some of these catchment-based entities to be confronted with this question of somehow Kaipara Uri programs taking a higher priority than catchment-based programs. That's never been my understanding of where this is all heading, and it starts at the headwaters of the catchments and work towards the centre of Kaipara Moana. And you can take that from either of the 5 main river systems, at that headwater level. But it's a bit of a worry if we're going to list as a priority, for example, what we're doing as Kaipara Uri against priorities that are granted to catchment-based entities. And I think the reading is a little bit premature right now. We haven't really had a full planting season where we've been able to get this alignment happening. But just raise that as a comment and an observation more than anything. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Tame. If I may also invite in John too. I know that first of all, Willie's role as mana whenua lead is designed to make sure that we're not seen as competition and we don't see ourselves that way. And secondly, we do have some investments set aside for the northern parts of the catchment in particular that John may wish to speak to. So.
Oh, kia ora. Look, nothing really to add here, except we do have separate budget, and now we have staff and capability to engage, which has been one of the big challenges to date. So I'm quite optimistic that we'll be able to really get things cracking. Kia ora.
Okay. Any further comments? Okay. Just did we complete the resolutions on?
No, not yet. No, not yet, Tame, on page 38.
Okay.
I'll move them.
Okay, moved by Virginia.
Happy to second.
Seconded by Jane Sherrod. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Those against? Any abstentions? Kia ora. Are there any other matters that people want to raise? Matters of general business?
How was the opening of Maurikura?
Kia ora, Shuri. The dedication, the blessing went very, very well. We had about 20 odd people present. Tiihi made sure we started before the sun rose, and that went very well actually. And we finally got the PO across the border, and so we've got our POs in place. No, it was great, and actually good to have that behind us, and sort of whakanoa our staff.
Congratulations to the Northern Regional Council. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Kia ora, through the chair, tautoko. I mean, that's been obviously as a first example of the issues around the different colours and things like that, but it was good to have the tikanga followed. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Justine.
Kia ora, everyone. I just wanted to say it was a very special event, and we were sorry that our tamaki makaurau people were not able to be in attendance, but we definitely recognised yourselves and also the whenua landowners, the people who provided those beautiful images. And it was a unfortunate but necessary in these COVID times that we couldn't have external partners visiting and being part of that blessing, but we're certainly going to be reaching out soon to make sure that we tell them how much we acknowledge them specifically. And I know our Deputy Chair Penny was very much specific around that too. So thank you everyone, and I think it was the right thing to proceed, and thank you again for those who were there for the warm welcome of my.
We were there in spirit.
Nice to know we got a whare.
Yeah.
Kia ora koutou.
Okay, well, perhaps we've got any indication of next placeholder dates, or will we expect something like that to be circulated?
Yeah, yep, I'll be sending that out today. And we've got all placements. I think there may be one in October that may require a further discussion, but I'll send them all out anyway. But our next date will be the 14th of March, 2022.
Well,
Oh, that's a long way away. Is that our workshop?
that seems
Oh no,
awfully long way away.
Yes, no, sorry, the
25th of January.
21st of February.
Okay.
21st of February. Apologies.
21st of February.
Yeah.
Is that a workshop, Sandra? Sorry.
No, that's our next formal meeting.
Oh, have we not got a workshop before then, Tammy?
Yeah, I think this one in January.
Yeah, I thought so.
No, because of January and everyone coming back on board. The next one's the 21st of February, and then our workshop is the 14th of March. And it's to keep in line with the governance and all the other criteria in which we need to deliver things. So, yeah, the order is.
We usually have a workshop between our public meetings, though, don't we?
Yeah, I think it came down to the end of this year how things were working out, but we've got alternating ones planned for 2022. So I'll be starting off with the formal meeting and then workshop, formal meeting, workshop. So we will be running in that order going into 2022. John.
If I could be so bold through you, Mr. Chair, the phasing next year, we're working back from what we need to do as a joint committee, or you need to do as a joint committee in terms of the year 3 work plan. So the dates are structured around that. But an idea is given, my assumption is that this will be a virtual meeting in February, given all of the circumstances around us right now. It could be that we set aside, say, 2 hours at the beginning for a workshop session and then move to a public meeting section afterwards. We haven't put out notices or anything yet determining time, but maybe that's something that Tame and Penny and Justine could discuss. But that would be a solution.
John, could I just ask, what's the it's Greg here, sorry. What's the likely agenda items for that decision-making meeting? Have we got a heads up on that?
Might have to ask Justine to answer that one.
Greg, kia ora. We're still working through the forward work program at the minute, but I think there'll be an update on Whenua Whānui Fund as well. Some of the work we're engaging on the draft criteria very shortly, hopefully, depending on how things go on that. Also, I would like, we spoke offline in another forum. We haven't had financials to this group for a while. I think it's important that we get some financials in front of you again. I think the last financials you would have seen were in the end of last financial year. So some of it's what I call more of the hygiene factor. I would like to bring the new style, if you like, dashboard around how the program is going and set out some key work program areas of focus. So in particular, getting a sense from yourselves, perhaps that is good for a workshopping segment around how the various major parts of the KMR program are going and where we want to put respective effort. That's to say, to prioritise effort. And I think that's going to be important, particularly in a COVID environment, given the risks that we've just talked about as well. Could be a useful workshop exercise before we go into the papers. Sorry.
Okay, so you'd feel comfortable with perhaps workshopping it beforehand and then going straight into the business meeting. You'd have enough time to take us through those items. Justin, that's just where I'm coming from. That's why I want to understand the items which sound reasonable.
Tami and Penny, we might want to look back around the practicalities of all that, but I'm generally comfortable having more engagement with yourselves at this early stage than less. And end of February does feel a bit far away.
Yeah, well,
thank you.
Thank you. I'll just probably remark on today's meeting. It's going to sort of flesh out to a 3-hour job. You put a 2-hour workshop on top of that. I don't know what it does to your brain, but it turns mine to something that looks like a casserole. And you know what? The other thing about that is we have to sit down and try and make sense of 5 hours of dialogue. And I don't know whether that's a symptom of risk or impact of COVID or traffic light observation. I don't know. But I favour the option of taking palatable levels of complexity, working that to the possible level of understanding achievable amongst the 12 minds of the Joint Committee, and then having confidence that our Māori Kura group can turn it into operations is my preference. And I just get a sense that 21 February is hell, it's 2 months away. I just worry about that a little, and I don't favour the option of let's jam up one day with 2 hours of workshop and then 3 hours of intense discussion. Kia ora.
Just thinking on my feet through you, Mr. Chair, can we come back to you with potentially the suggestion of a separate workshop session, either soon before that 21 February date or an adjustment to that date? I think we can come back to you on that.
Okay.
I should say my brain's not working as it should. One of the other key items to come in February is the 6-month report, which is an obligation to Ministry for the Environment. So that's when Justine's referring to financials and things that will be part of that. Kia ora.
Thank you. Kia ora, everybody. Any further comments? Any further matters? Well, congratulations, Kaipara Māori Kura. The first official meeting with the Poutātaki in place, and sort of a couple of transitional arrangements with rearrangement of the deck chairs. And a big thank you to one and all, and Malcolm Nicholson, to one and all at Northland Regional Council. Big thank you for the dedication and how we got through that last Friday. If there's no further business, no further points of discussion, look forward to the next iteration of our schedule, and happy to report that we are 8 minutes ahead of schedule. Huri noa, tēnā koutou, kia taupoko hia tā tātou noho, I roto I te inui. Tēnei rā ihua, whakahoki tonu ana, tō mātou reo whakamoemiti mō ngā tini manākitanga, iu nei ki runga ki tō mātou kaupapa me mātou katoa I tēnei wā. Kia neke tonu hia taua korowai manāki ki runga I ngā tini kārangaranga huanga, whanaunga, te hinga kei raro, I ngā kapu o te pauri, ngā he manawa o te tinana me te wairua. Tuku atu kia rātou me mātou katoa, te koutou taro, piki te ora, te kaha te marama. E nei ngā inui raro I te ingoa kaha, atua tama, wairua tapu ana e puna mau te māngai, tautoko mai, ai ni ake ni ai. Very, very Merry Christmas to one and all, and a great and prosperous Happy New Year. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Thank you very much, everyone.
E tu katoa.
Kia ora.
Merry Christmas.